Fest 2019. And today the topic of our talk will be the scientific practices in ancient India. Okay, so let's start. So scientific practices in various regions of ancient India. When we talk about scientific practices, so scientific practices is nothing about sitting in a lab researching on a thing and working with equations and everything like that. Scientific practice is, since humans are observational beings, they look at the things around themselves. They figure out how they work, why they work. Once they have this knowledge, they try to apply that knowledge to their everyday life. Once they have acquired enough of it, the knowledge, and they start applying it to their everyday life, it makes certain tasks quite easy for them. It also avoids the humans that they make mistakes. So, applying a scientific approach to our day-to-day life was quite essential, and it was well managed in our ancient society. So, how this scientific practice were included in our society was due to the various universities that were working in ancient times. For example, we talk about the background here is a photograph of the Nalanda University. It was around 5th century BC, 5th century, sorry, and it was founded in the state of Magad, present-day Bihar. And I have titled this slide as India, the land of sciences, because there were several universities which taught science in the ancient times. For example, the Nalanda University in Bihar, the Takshashila University in present-day Pakistan. So these university had a quite variety of subjects which they taught, and there were many scholars. We will be talking about the curriculum of these universities now. The curriculum of these universities. There were approximately 50 to 55 subjects taught in those universities, but due to the time constraint and limited knowledge which we have nowadays, I will be talking about quite a few of them which are major. For example, grammar and linguistics, also called Shabda Vidya. Shabda means letter or the word. So grammar and linguistics was an important part of Sanskrit as well as all of the classical languages of India. And you will see the use of grammar and linguistics nearly in all of the names described below. For example, the second is astronomy, which is called Khagol in Sanskrit. Khag means the space, and Gol means the sphere. So the celestial sphere, the study of celestial sphere is called astronomy or Khagol. Third is physics. Physics is called Bhautik Vigyan. Bhautik is the word made from Bhut. Bhut means all the physical objects. The study of physical objects is called Bhautik Vigyan. Chemistry, same wise, is called Rasayan Vigyan. Rasayan is the Sanskrit name for chemicals. Medicine, Ayurveda, which is quite important nowadays also. Commerce, Arthashastra. Here, Earth means the money, and Shastra means the study of money. So the study of money is called commerce or economics. We have geography, which is called Bhugol. And now Bhu means the earth and Gol means the sphere again. So Bhugol means the earthly sphere. The study of earthly sphere is called Bhugol or geography. Military sciences or Sanya Shastra. Since the ancient India was made of many types of kingdoms and there were rulers and everyone, so studying military and the strategies and the techniques was quite important. So military sciences was also taught. Philosophy and arts, which is called darshan and kala. Darshan is for philosophy and kala is for arts. So these were also an important part of the ancient society. Politics. Now here politics is not about the political parties or Rajniti. Politics is Niti Shastra. Niti means how we should do stuff, how we can manage stuff, how we can manage time, resources, and everything is called politics. So one of the most important books we see is the Niti Shastra, is the Chanakya Niti. Nearly everyone would have heard about that book, Chanakya Niti. It has many nitis. Nitis means many politics in there. Social structure and management, which is called the Samaj Vigyan. Samaj is the society and Vigyan means the science, social science. Samaj Vigyan was very important because it taught how the society should work, how the jurisdiction should work, how the disputes should be solved, and everything like that. The works of creation or Shilpakari. Works of creation include carpentry, pottery, masonry, and everything, which is like craftsmanship. The students were also taught craftsmanship. Dialectics and logics. These were quite a rare study, and it was pursued by a little amount of scholars, but it was also there, and there were several other topics as well. Now, there were several scholars which studied in those universities. They, after studying, they went across the country, and as it is said in Sanskrit, Vidwan Sarvatra Pujayate. Vidwan Sarvatra Pujayate means a wise man is respected everywhere. So when scholars, after studying from these universities, went to different parts of the countries, they had a huge impact on the society. The scholars inculcated a sense of scientific approach in the way of living and social conduct of the ancient Indian civilizations. So they taught the people how they can include science and every small scientific methods and everything in their day-to-day life. Now we will talk about the different scientific fields in which the ancient Indians pioneered. First of all, and the most important ones, is the medicinal sciences. It has several branches to it, and the most important of it is Ayurveda. Ayurveda is prominent science which is also in conduct today, as we can see several examples of Ayurveda in our day-to-day life. For example, the neem twigs. You have seen the elder people in villages use these neem twigs to brush their teeth. Neem have antibacterial and antibiotic properties which helps in healthy gums and teeth. Ginger honey for cough. Whenever we have cough, we take some ginger juice, mix it with honey, and just it somewhat solves our cough problem. Haldi milk, which is for immunity. Onion and haldi, when we get swelling, paste of haldi and onion is used. Bhringraj for healthy air. Multani mitti for skin. We have seen that several shampoo brands nowadays also use the words like our product has Bhringraj, Amla, Shikakai. These are several Ayurvedic herbs, I must say, which are also used in nowadays products. And the concept of Vat, Pitta, and Kapha. Vat, Pitta, and Kapha is a concept of Ayurveda which uses the fact that the human body is made up of five elements, which are Shiti, Jal, Pavak, Gagan, and Samira, which are earth, sky, water, air, and fire. So these Vat, Pitta, Kapha are the classification. Any of these three, if increases, it causes certain kinds of ailments in human body, and there are certain medications according to these classifications. Second one, and the most common problems in us, is the dentistry. The dentistry was practiced in the Indian subcontinent since 5000 BC. You can see here a bow drill being under work. A bow drill actually is a curved piece of wood with a string attached to it. When the wood was stretched, this string rolled this drill and it bore a hole in the teeth. And this is how the ancient dentists work on the teeth of humans and cure the ailments. The ancient Indian civilization has evidences that dentistry was practiced, and there were several workers which helped in this dentistry industry. For example, nowadays we have straps on the chair which holds the hand of patients to avoid them from moving. But at that time, they had workers who held the patient. Next one, we have plastic surgery and the cataract surgery. These, the Shushruta, Rishi Shushruta was called the father of plastic surgery. As you can see, that Shushruta has done several kinds of plastic surgery and cataract surgery. He was pioneered in it. And he also wrote a book called the Shushruta Samhita, which talks about many surgical instruments and techniques. The next diagram we see here is a list of quite a small list of instruments he used. He used several types of instruments. This is just a small of them. Shushruth, there are several stories which says that there was a man whose nose was damaged and how Shushruth used natural sedatives and did a plastic surgery on the man and cured it. Moving on to the next science, architecture, which is called Vastu Shastra in Sanskrit. Vastu means the place where we live, space, and the Shastra means the study of it. So Vastu Shastra is architecture, and it was an important part of the ancient culture. The flush toilet, as we know that Indus Valley civilization was one of the first civilizations which included toilets particularly designed for flushing. They were personal as well as public toilet complexes found in the Indus Valley. These are example of public toilet. And here's the tank. These toilets were connected to a system of drains which led all the waste to a single huge tank. And from that tank, on regular intervals, the solid waste was extracted and used as a fertilizer. So this is how they made a huge system of toilets, and they also made the use of the waste. Talking about water conservation, myself being from Rajasthan, I have seen the scarcity of water, and there were this. It was also faced by the ancient people, so they devised several methods to counter this. For example, we have a structure called Bawdi in Rajasthan, which is called Vav in Gujarat. Right here, you see is a called the Chand Bawdi, which is a huge well which has steps leading down to the water. And here is the Adalaj Vav, which is also a step well. So these structures were made by ancient kings and the wealthy people. In every village, a Bawdi was there, which collected rainwater for drinking purposes. And similar ways was there to collect rainwater for other purposes, such as washing and everything. But the drinking water was needed to be pure, so it was collected separately. Moving on, we have the construction techniques. Nowadays, we use the clay bricks and cement as the construction material, and sometimes the iron rods. But in ancient times, we used rock and lime. These temples and ancient buildings we see are made from rock, and the gaps are filled with lime. These buildings were huge, so the angles, the directions, and the elevations and everything was needed to be analyzed deeply prior to the construction. And since these were halls, huge halls, the problem of ventilation was also there, which was also tackled very nicely. And the natural lighting was used to good extent in these structures. Right here, you see the Brihadishwar temple located in Tanjore. The interesting thing about is the top stone right here. We can see it in this photo right here. This one, this top stone is actually a 80-ton rock, single piece, which was to be carried atop this temple and then placed. So there are several theories how this could have been done. A theory says this is the temple and this is the rock. A huge ramp was created, and then the rock was rolled upside. And then another theory says a spiral staircase-like structure was constructed, and then it was placed. So there are not a lot of written text which tell us more about it, but yes, these are probably the construction techniques that were used. I suggest if you visit this place, you can also look up for stories and everything from local people there. Moving on, another example of beautiful architecture is the Kailashnath temple in the Ellora cave complex located in Maharashtra, Aurangabad. This temple is unique because it was carved out of a single stone, and it was carved out from the mountain in a deep cut. So this whole temple is made with a single piece of rock, and this here is the floor plan of this temple. You can see how symmetric it is, and the perfect use of right angles, squares, and everything. And this temple is one of the best examples of rock cut sculptures in the world, the Kailashnath temple of Aurangabad. There are several caves alongside it, collectively known as the Ellora caves, which are a group of Hindu, Jain, Buddhism temples. Metallurgy. This was another science which was pioneered by the ancient Indians and used throughout the world. First one we will be talking about is the wood steel. Now, wood steel, the photograph you right here see is a steel blade which has these patterns, these curvy, beautiful white and gray patterns. These are not carved with hands or anything. These are actually due to the method by which this blade was made. Wood steel is characterized by beautiful patterns of bands and high carbon content. This was a high grade steel which was very hard, hence it was used to make blades. It originated in South India, the present day Tamil Nadu, and the word woods come from the Tamil word vuk, the ancient Tamil word vuk, which means the alloy of metal, and the brick of steel which was exported was called vuk, which was translated, which was mispronounced as woods there, and later we picked up the word woods steel. It was exported to most of the ancient empires, such as the Rome, the Greece, because this was so hard. It was used to make the famous Damascus swords. We have seen and heard about the Damascus swords used by the gladiators and all, which was made by the wood steel. We all know about the element zinc. Yeah, right here, this is a beautiful example of a spearhead made from the Damascus or wood steel, and you can see the beautiful patterns which show up on this. Mm, Yeah, right here we talk about zinc. So zinc is a element which was first extracted in Zawar, Rajasthan area. It was the about 4th to 3rd century BCE. Zinc has a problem that it has quite a low melting point, around 900 degrees Celsius. So it was heated in open furnace, say on direct fire or coal, it reached to a high temperature, and the zinc used to sublimate and then become fume and then go away. So they devised a method which could extract zinc from the ore. What they did was they took an earthen pot, they filled it with zinc ore, covered it with charcoal, and set the charcoal on fire. So the zinc ore was not directly heated, it was inside a earthen core. Now, when the zinc was heated, when the temperature reached above 900 degrees Celsius, it melted. The zinc melted and then made fumes. So the fumes had no space to escape. All it did was, since it was heavier than air, it used to move down, and there was a pot filled with water. When the fumes came in contact with the water, it deposited solid zinc right here. So this is how the ancient Indians first discovered or invented the technique of zinc production. It was produced on a large scale. It was hard, okay. So this technique was distillation, early stage of distillation, how metals are extracted from distillation method. This famous example of the iron pillar situated in Delhi. We have we might have already heard about it. This iron pillar is about 8 ton, and it was constructed by Chandragupta II around 300 to 400 CE. The interesting thing about it is made from iron, high quality iron, yet it doesn't rust. So the perfect amount of composition it has, the alloy and the amount of carbon it has, makes it rust resistant since thousands of years standing in rain and sun, but it's not much damaged. It is proposed that it stood at the Udaygiri cave complex before being brought to the Delhi. This pillar was also targeted with cannonballs and everything to be destroyed, but it was hard to destroy as it has several marks of cannonball hitting it. And this is a beautiful example of metallurgy, uh, which was tailored to the needs. Next, we talk about physics. As we know, physics is quite has modernized nowadays, but it was also present in the ancient era. Though it was rudimentary and it was preliminary, but it was present there. For example, the atom. Now, the picture you see right here is of Maharshi Kanad. He was a great philosopher of his time and a physicist who proposed the philosophy. He was a philosopher, so he thought that everything was made up of small particles called Anu. Anu means we can, these are analogous to the present day molecules. He said that everything is made up of Anus or small particles. He further said that these Anu, are made from even smaller indivisible particles called the Paramanu. Paramanu means param plus anu, which means extreme particle, or the atoms, hence in Sanskrit, are called parmanu. Parmanu are called the extreme particles. This was a philosophy developed by Maharshi Kanad. Moving on, we have optics. Now, optics, the photo you see right here, you may think that this is a rather simple handheld mirror, but it's called the Arnamula mirror. The special thing about it is the mirrors we see in our houses is made up of glass, which has a thin reflective lining on its back. But this mirror is made from pure metal single sheet. The reflective surface you see right here is a single metal plate which is polished to such precision that it becomes a mirror. These mirrors are now not made much, hence they are very costly. And most of the earlier example of these mirrors belong to the kings and queens and are now present in the museums. The ancient Indians also used a lot of glass and colored glasses for beautifying the palaces and everything. A solar light show at the Padmanabh Swami temple in Kerala on equinox is also seen. It's a beautiful example of architecture when mixed with astronomy. You can see it here. The photograph on the left, this one, is from the Mehrangarh Castle in Jodhpur. This is the Darbar court of him. So the windows you see here is it is made up of colored glass which present a beautiful view right here. The whole room is colored, and this is a ancient palace, and they used the mirrors on the roof and colored glasses on the doors which created a beautiful scene inside. This here is the gopuram of the Padmanabh Swami temple in Kerala. You can see there are windows on this gopuram. On the day of equinox, when the sun rises exactly in the east, these windows serve as a passing of for the sun. You can see the sun appears from here, then from here, and subsequently in all the windows. So this is a beautiful example of architecture when mixed with astronomy. You can see the sun going through all these windows two times a year on the equinoxes. This one is from Amer Fort, Jaipur. It's a sitting room which faces in the valley. The mesh or jali is called in Hindi. You can see here is not made of metal. The specialty about this mesh is it is made from rock. A thin layer of rock has been carved to such precision that it acts as a mesh and it creates beautiful shadows. So you can see how optics and the uh, light phenomenon was used in palaces to beautify it and as per the need. Moving on, we can see example of the pinhole camera in the Hampi. Hampi is a great example of ancient heritage where we see several temples and ruins. There's a hole in this wall from where we can see the gopuram of the temple. And when we look at the opposite wall of the hole, there's an inverted image of that gopuram. So this basically acts as a pinhole for the gopuram, and an inverted image is created on the other side of the wall. Some people say this is mastered and it was made, but some people suggest that it's just a coincidence. So yeah, you can see this in the Hampi, where a pinhole camera phenomenon is observed. Clay pots. Nearly every Indian household has used clay pots once. So clay pots are usually used in hot or arid climates to keep the water cool. You have seen that the water which is present in the clay pots is cool without any external effort because the clay pot is porous. Water seeps out. It takes up the latent heat of the water present inside and evaporates, making the water inside cool. This technique has been used for thousands of years to keep the water cool without any additional supply of electricity or additional bills. Also, since this is made of soil, it's sustainable and eco-friendly. So clay pots have been used for thousands of years in ancient India, and nowadays also we use them very frequently every summers. So these clay pots are a well example of how evaporation techniques was used to keep the water cool and how scientific approach helped the people have a better day-to-day life. Moving on to astronomy, one of the most studied fields in whole of the world, I must say. Astronomy was also studied extensively in ancient India. So there are several physical examples as well as text examples of how astronomy played a significant role in the ancient Indian civilizations. We have also have the astrology, which is based on the study of star movement and then predicting the future. So that's a complete different field. We will talk about astronomy. First thing we have is sundials. Sundials can be found throughout India. For example, in Jaipur, Delhi, Varanasi, Ujjain, and several different places, these types of huge sundials can be found, which are basically buildings which act as a sundial. These sundials are called Jantar Mantar in the language, our language. So Jantar Mantars are found throughout the country and are quite important and very quite important to the kings who made them. For example, this one right here is the Jantar Mantar from Jaipur. You can see the central piece and the curve, which helps us measure the time. This was constructed by the Raja of Jaipur, Raja Samai Jai Singh, and it's a complete complex which has various about 19 different kinds of astronomical instruments fitted in there, including sundials and everything. Right here, you see the photograph of the Jantar Mantar in Jaipur. Here you can see there is a sundial and there's another sundial. There's a huge calendar of the movement of sun across the stars, the concave dishes and everything. There are several instruments present throughout the complex. It belonged to the king because he was quite keenly interested in astronomy. Also, the ancient Indians uh, developed several constellations in the night sky, which are similar to the Greek constellations also, and they are still used across the world in many places. Moving on, we have the classic example of Arundhati Vasisht or Mizar and Alcor. These two stars, Mizar and Alcor, are a binary star system in the constellation of Saptarishi, as called in Hindi, or the Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper or Big Bear in English. So we have the Arundhati Vasisht star system in the constellation of Saptarishi. It's known since ancient times and it was used as a test for good eyesight. Because if you people have tried looking at the Arundhati Vasisht, you can see that it's not visible to the most of the people. Myself, I can't see it without my specs. So Arundhati Vasisht was a good test for good eyesight because it needs high resolution power and a perfect eyesight for you to be able to look at it. You can see it in here. This is the Big Dipper or Saptarishi, 7 stars, and you can find it in this one star particular. They have 2 stars, 1 and 2. This is Mizar and Alcor, Arundhati and Vasisht. Uh, One interesting thing about it is in South Indian traditions, it's also used as in ancient time, it was used as a good omen for newly married couples because since this is a binary star, it was considered as a good omen to look at it and pray for the happy life ahead. Moving further, we have the solar eclipses and lunar eclipses known as Chandra Grahan, Surya Grahan in Hindi. So these Surya Grahana and Chandra Grahan, if someone wants to predict when a solar eclipse would happen, it will need quite a lot of calculations and a knowledge of astronomy and the movement of sun and stars. As you already know that the ancient calendars already predict the solar eclipses very well and the lunar eclipse as well. The Hindu calendar is based on the lunar cycle. The Hindu calendar, which has months, and the month is divided in 2 parts: the Shukla Paksh and the Krishna Paksh, which are basically the night side of the moon and the bright day. When the moon rises in the day and when the moon rises in the night, these are called the Shukla Paksh and the Krishna Paksh. Our Hindu calendar is based on this, the lunar cycle. Also, interestingly, the festival of Uttarayan, as celebrated as called in Gujarat, is marks the winter solstice. We celebrate Uttarayan on 14th of January, which is not the solar solstice at present, but thousands of years ago, the 14th January, since the Earth has axial tilt and it has the winter solstice changes days. So thousands of years ago, the winter solstice and Uttarayan coincided. So Uttarayan actually marks the northward movement of the sun. Uttar plus Ayan. Uttar means the north and Ayan means the movement. Uttarayan means the northward movement of the sun when the sun started moving north after the winter solstice. So these are the examples of how astronomy was used, studied, and used applied in day-to-day life. Mathematics. We all already know that mathematics was a subject which was studied extensively by the ancient Indian scholars, and they did several discoveries and several inventions in the field of mathematics. The first and foremost is the discovery of zero. Zero, although it was also studied by independently by Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, they had a symbol for it, but they didn't include it in the numeral system. Uh, the India was the first one to recognize it as a separate numeral for the first time. Zero, which was given a symbol of a circle, zero. It originated from the philosophy of Shunyata. Shunyata means emptiness. This emptiness was connected to the mathematics, and a new number called zero was devised. You already know that the invention of zero has was a huge milestone in the mathematics field because it led to several other complications in mathematics. We were able to do several complicated stuff in mathematics after the discovery of zero. Zero and its operations were first recorded by Brahmagupta in 628 AD. This photograph right here is one of the oldest and the only examples of the zero, numeral zero, still existing today. Second is the trigonometry. Now, trigonometry was studied in ancient India under the name of Trikonamiti. Now, Trikonamiti is also another example of the Shabda Vidya which I talked earlier. Trikonamiti means it's made up of three words, Tri, Kon, Miti. Tri means three, Kon means angles, and Miti means the study. Trikonamiti and the study of three angles. It was developed by several scholars collectively over the period of time, such as Aryabhat and Varahamir. So the angles of sine, cosine, and tangent were actually called as they used the word jya for the sine and kojya for cosine. You can see here that if this is the angle, this is called the jya or sine, sine of an angle, and this is called the kojya, cosine. This is called the vyasardh. Now vyas is called the diameter of a circle, vyas. So vyas plus ardh means half of the diameter, which is radius. So Vyatsard is the radius of this. This is chap or the arc, or this is Ukramajya or the sign, inverse of sine. So there were several tables and several trigonometric operations present at that time, and they were used extensively. Moving forward, we have one of the most famous, one of the most used formulas of all time, which is called Sridhar Acharya's formula. We fastly pronounce it as Sridhar Acharya method, and it's actually Sridhar plus Acharya method. Sridhar was the Acharya who lived around 900 AD and developed this formula known as the quadratic formula. This formula is very important to us because it helps us to find the roots of a quadratic equation. This was developed by Sridhar Acharya in 900 AD, and he wrote several kinds of books relating to mathematics. And since this one is used most oftenly, he is famous for this formula, the quadratic formula, which we use nowadays. Now, moving on to the last kind of sciences in my talk, but the sciences are not yet limited. There are several kinds of talk sciences. The war strategy. Now, as I already told, the Indian subcontinent or Bharatvarsh was made up of several kind of kingdoms, little kingdoms, and they had consistent wars among themselves. So the war strategy was an important part of a kingdom. So it was studied extensively and was pioneered by scholars. In this is also called Saina Vidya or Rananiti. Ran means the war, or Niti means the strategy of war. Rananiti. First of all, we have the Vyuha. Now, Vyuha is the Sanskrit name for the military formations. There are examples of military formations throughout the world. For example, the You might, if you have seen the movie 300, you have heard about the turtle formation of the gladiators, which was a tagged formation, which helped them stay strong from the enemy. Now, vyuh is the Sanskrit word for military formations. There are hundreds of different types of views described in ancient texts. Um, views are military formations, and for example, the Chakra Vyuha, the Kranch Vyuha, the Vajra Vyuha, etc., are described in the Mahabharata as well. There are several examples of it. For example, this one right here is the Chakra Vyuha, the famous view which is also mentioned in the legend of Mahabharata. This is a Chakra Vyuha. Chakra means wheel. So Chakra Vyuha means formation like a wheel. It was usually a huge circular, or it has several concentric circles. The Chakravyuh has its other types or subtypes as well. So this is a Chakravyuh. There are other views as well. For example, the Ardha Chandrakar view, which is Ardha Chandra. Ardha means half, Chandra means moon, half moon-like formation. This is called the Ardha Chandrakar view. Cronch. Cronch is the Sanskrit name for the bird stroke. So this formation looks like a stroke bird. Hence it's called the Cronch view. These are just few examples of the different and wide variety of views which were used in the ancient times. Moving on, we have weapons. Now, weapons, there are hundreds types of weapons described, and since weapons were uh, increasing day by day, protections tailored for specific weapons and weapons tailored for specific protections were pioneered. For example, I have an example right here. For example, if you visit Rajasthan or any other palace, you will see these spikes on the main entrance door. These spikes were installed because prior to they were not there. So when the door was closed, the army outside the castle, when they wanted to enter the castle, they used to use the elephant, and it was banged on the door, and it opened the door. So to avoid this, the ancient people installed such kind of iron spokes on the outside of the door, which prevented the elephant from banging their head and opening the door. So these are various kind of strategies and various kind of weapons which were used in ancient times. Also, we have an example of this shield or dhal and these guitars and some kind of axe and other instruments as well. Now, this dhal was supposed to be a protection instrument, but look at it how it's decorated using gold and silver also. So this is an example of high quality craftsmanship or shilpakari. Since this is an utility instrument and it's still beautifully decorated, so this is a nice example of how craftsmanship was used in ancient times. These weapons right here are called the katar. Sometimes they were spring loaded and they were hidden inside the sleeves. So when it was opened, it shoots out the knife and it injured the enemy. So these are various kind of weapons used. So we talked about a lot of sciences and scientific practices present in the ancient world. So it's time that we appreciate that as Ek Bharat Tha, Shresth Bharat Tha. So it means that there were several kind of sciences in ancient India. They were pioneered and they were very well indulged in the day-to-day life of the people living here. So we can be proud of our roots and how the ancient people had quite a good knowledge of these things, and they also used it for their benefit, as well as they avoided mistakes by studying about science and then applying it to their day-to-day life. With this, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you. Uh, any questions? If anything, I'm up for it.